Hi everyone! Today I'm going to talk about a slightly different perspective on typology, and even though it might sound like a slight critique to the theory, it's just an idea that I believe is important to be kept in mind when we deal with any of these topics. So more specifically, I'm going to talk about the fact that the map is not the territory. A few weeks ago, I also made a post on my Instagram page, INF Jinxed, about this particular idea, and today I would like to kind of expand on that and talk about it in the video. So all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So I mentioned the idea of the map is not the territory. And what I mean by that is humans have existed since before all of these typological systems were created. We have Jungian typology / MBTI / cognitive function model, whatever you might want to call it. We have Enneagram, we have the Big Five, we have socionics, and a lot of other different theories that talk about personality. And even though all of these theories are incredibly helpful, and whatever, we might resonate with some more than others, or some can be better used in specific contexts than in others. None of these theories are supposed to explain everything about us. None of these theories are supposed to be completely accurate in describing someone's cognition, inner experience, behavior, and so on and so forth. And even though this sounds like something that is, normal and everyone should know this or everyone should understand this, I feel like because we get so interested in these kinds of systems, we sometimes forget that there's more to the picture. And there's a risk of over-identifying with a specific type when in reality we are much more than that specific type. Even if you take two people who are the same MBTI type, the same core Enneagram type with the same wing and the same tri-type and the same instinctual variant, you will still find a lot of difference between those two people, because there are a lot of factors that come into play, like the culture they come from, maybe the environment where they grew up, maybe, religious aspects, preferences that they have, jobs that they have, and the way those jobs have influenced their perception of things, etc., etc. The life experiences that they had with other people, with work, with, whatever, the trauma that they have been through, their mental health level, their level of development, their age, their gender identity, the languages that they speak. There's a lot of research pointing out that our language can have a very strong impact on our cognition as well. It's not just the other way around. So sometimes being fluent in specific languages can also influence the way that we think and perceive things. So it's extremely important to keep these things in mind when we deal with typology, because otherwise we might risk hurting ourselves, harming ourselves in the process, and also harming and hurting other people. So coming back to the idea of the map is not the territory. The reason why I'm saying this is because people existed. There were differences between people in their cognition, in their behavior, in their personality. And then people analyzed people in order to create these maps. Certain psychologists or psychiatrists or philosophers or theorists use their own biased subjective interpretation of reality and created a system that, try to explain some of these differences that exist between people. But bear in mind, it is impossible to capture the entirety of human experiences in any of these systems, because our knowledge and our understanding of the human brain and the human mind is constantly evolving. And I'm sure that in the next 10, 20 years, we'll be far ahead and we'll know even more about this. And who knows, this might drastically change the way we look at typology. We are starting to incorporate more and more neuroscientific research in this field, which means that we might get very different insights about how the mind works, about personality differences about, you know, how the theory maps to our brains. But even so, there are still limitations to this type of research, because it's still us, the people, who are looking at the data and trying to interpret things based on the way we set up the experiments, based on the way we set up specific, ideas and concepts that we're trying to then test. So in a way, because there's no external frame of reference, like some objective body that analyzes these types of conclusions and data and so on and so forth, we're still kind of going around in a circle. We're defining something like a concept, and then we're trying to test it, but because we might start from a biased definition of a specific idea, we might still struggle to kind of remain objective in the process. And sometimes we might engage in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes. Anyway, so the maps are similar to the maps that we create to represent Earth. This is a specific continent, blah, 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 blah. But just because you look at a map or at a globe, it doesn't mean that you capture everything there is on that planet. It doesn't mean that that's exactly how the territory looks like. It's an approximation, it's a representation, it's a symbol, and it's extremely useful, it's extremely insightful. We can use it in a lot of different contexts, but it's not the territory. So when we describe a cognitive function, or when we describe a specific personality type, or a temperament, or an interaction style, or an Enneagram type, or a wing, or whatever, we are describing a symbol that we attach to a certain pattern that we see in people or in ourselves. The symbol can help us reflect on our own inner experiences, because actually there's a lot of research again pointing towards the fact that symbols are some of the most helpful therapeutic tools as well. Those of you who have watched my videos for longer know that I have been training in a form of psychotherapy called psychodrama, and in psychodrama this is one of the most fundamental concepts, that we use symbols to reflect on our inner life and to heal things. Because sometimes, even though we try to put things into words, it might be difficult to actually explain things. Words are also symbols, they're also a map in a way. So we might use words to describe the functions and the personality types and the Enneagram and so on and so forth, but all of these things still kind of reflect back to ourselves, what we are about, what we stand for. But again, it's not the whole truth, it's not the whole story. So the idea that I kind of want to leave you with is that typology is fantastic. It's obvious, you know, from all of my previous videos that I absolutely love typology. But in that balance that we have in our minds, where typology is on one side, it's important to keep in mind the limitations that exist within the theory, the other aspects of human experience and human consciousness and cognition that typology does not explain, and also the uniqueness of every human being and the process of continuously evolving, which, yes, typology is supposed to capture as well. But sometimes the evolution and the change that we engage in can, you know, kind of take a different path than the one that typology explains. Or not necessarily a different path, but it kind of adds onto that. We might have, you know, if I'm talking about Enneagram, we might see how a specific Enneagram type integrates towards another one. And we will find those things in ourselves if we are that Enneagram type. But our change and our evolution adds on to that. And there will be other ways in which we grow and evolve that cannot be explained through that process of integration. That's just an example, but I think you get the idea. So anyway, these are my thoughts on this topic, and I'm probably going to expand more on that. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching this video. Thanks a lot for being with me. And as always, see you next time with another video on typology.